You're walking through a park when you're crashed into by some drunk driving aliens. When you wake up, your body ain't what it used to be. We start things off by meeting Ichiro Inuyashiki, a man who age has not been kind to. He is driving his family to their new home. They reach the outside of the house, and his daughter, Mari, says that this place is amazing. When the garage door opens and the actual owner of the house drives out, he introduces himself and asks if they're the new neighbors. After he drives off, we see their actual house, much to the dismay of his family. Inside, his wife Mary suggests they go and get some food, leaving Ichiro unpacking all by himself. His lower back pain causes him to stop, and he pulls a letter out of his back pocket, which says that a follow-up examination is required. The next day, as he makes his way home from work, he comes across an empty cardboard box with an abandoned little Shiba Inu inside, and like any reasonable person, he brings it home. His family doesn't agree with the choice, saying it will just stink up the house, but he says he'll just keep her in his room. He feeds the dog some dinner and gives her the name Hanako. The next day at the doctor's office, he quite casually receives grim news from the doctor that he has stomach cancer and is given 3 months left to live. Heartbroken, he tries to call his family, but his calls go unanswered and ignored. Upon arriving home, he again tries to tell his family, but they don't give him the time of day. He takes Hanako for a walk. While walking, he wonders to himself that if he told them, would they even care about it? Would they even cry for him? He reaches a park, then begins to cry and hug the only one that really seems to care about him, Hanako. While crying, he notices a teenager standing nearby, when reality in front of them ripples and a spaceship crashes into the both of them. Hanako is fine, by the way. We then see a neural network and can hear unknown entities reporting on the crash. They say there is no damage to their ship, but they did destroy 2 intelligent life forms. They order for the immediate restoration of the life forms, even though they only have weapon units on board, which have the power to destroy a planet. They collectively agree that's not their problem, and they dip out before the space cops show up. The next morning, Ichiro wakes up, thinking that he surprisingly feels refreshed. That morning at breakfast, he notices that the food he is eating tastes different, and he has developed a substantial thirst. On his way to the follow-up doctor's appointment, he notices that his back doesn't hurt anymore, and after being bumped into, that his glasses don't have lenses but he can see just fine. After receiving another x-ray, the images that are taken are just white around his body. The doctors think that the machine must be broken. On his way home, he starts to feel nauseous. He takes out his phone and sees just a blank screen, and begins to think something is wrong. Back in his room, he smashes his phone with a hammer, revealing no electronics inside, just an empty case. Suddenly, his arm begins steaming, and he understandably freaks out. It stops, and he tries to calm himself and Hanako down when she licks him, and... Even more freaked out now, he begins waving his arm around the room when it shoots out everything he ate that day onto the wall, which apparently still tastes pretty good. His arm goes back to normal, and he begins an investigation on himself. He begins pressing on random parts of his body. In part 2, you'll find out why it was lucky he didn't press on his eyes here, when he feels something under his chin. Upon pressing it, his entire body opens up, and he is shocked to see that he is now some sort of cyborg. Later that night, he makes his way back to the area where the crash happened, wondering to himself what he is now, and if he is even human anymore. Nearby, we see a homeless man, who is about to turn his life around, being attacked by a group of teenagers. Ichiro intervenes, when the teens surround and begin beating him with baseball bats. One hits him on the side of the head, knocking him unconscious. Thinking they've killed him, they begin to move on to the homeless man, when Ichiro's automatic defense systems take over, identifying all of the teens and firing warning shots around them, which causes them to scramble away. After this, his unconscious system then doxes all of the teenagers that were involved, revealing all of their personal information and what they've done here tonight to the world. Yeah, good. A short time later, the homeless man gives Ichiro a heartfelt thanks from the bottom of his heart. After he leaves, Ichiro falls to his knees, crying, realizing that he's still a human with a heart, despite whatever has happened to him, and that saving this man tonight has finally made him feel alive. He decides that from here on out, he is going to save as many lives as he can. The next day, at a nearby school, we meet Hiro Shishigami, who notices that his friend Naoki Ando has been absent from school the last couple of days after being beat up by some bullies. He goes to visit him. After entering his room and reading the latest issue of One Piece, it gets me tearing up sometimes too, man. Shishigami asks him why he hasn't been at school lately, and jokingly accuses him of being the serial killer that's been going around lately. Shishigami then tells Ando he's not really Hiro Shishigami anymore, displaying this cool little trick he's learned. Ando is amazed and asks him how he did that, thinking it must be some kind of magic trick. Shishigami refuses to elaborate, instead saying they should go outside. Ando follows behind him, trying to figure out how he did that thing with his head. Once outside, Shishigami points to a group of crows and tells Ando to watch closely. Shishigami keeps that thing on him. Shooting at the crows, they begin to fly off. Ando says he knows that trick, that because crows are smart, they think they got shot at. When Shishigami says that it's not getting away.
Bah.
The crow falls out of the sky, dead, to the shock of Ando. They then make their way to a local TV retailer, where Shishigami replaces all of the stock TV footage with lewd imagery, and none of the workers seem to know what's going on. Ando says that these are some awesome tricks that he's learned. For his final act, Shishigami shows Ando one more little magic trick. They make their way to a busy street of traffic, where Shishigami, like a conductor, begins to orchestrate car accidents on a massive scale, causing every car in the street to crash into each other. There's not even a person in this car. Ando realizes that there's no actual magic trick, and Shishigami now has these incredible powers. Later that night at Ando's house, Shishigami reveals his full cyborg body and convinces Ando to come back to school, saying that if anyone bullies him again, he'll just kill them. On his way home, Shishigami blindly spins in a circle in the middle of a street and picks a house at random, letting himself in, where he, using the finger gun from earlier, mercilessly kills everyone inside, mother, father, and child. After, he states that he finally feels alive, in contrast to Ichiro, who feels alive from saving others. Their daughter arrives home, calling out to her mother and walking into the kitchen, where she finds her dead body. In shock, she backpedals into the hallway, finding Shishigami standing there, menacingly. He tells her to take a seat, and that they're going to have a chat. She asks what he wants. When he asks her what kind of manga she reads, she hesitantly responds One Piece and Attack on Titan.
One Piece? Usomachi.
Fearful, she asks him if her younger brother and father are dead too. Why does that matter? We're talking about One Piece. She begs him not to kill her. Elsewhere, we see Ichiro begin to scan the area, listening to see if anyone needs help, when he hears the girl crying out for her life. Ichiro immediately gets in his car, trying to make his way over to her. However, he gets stuck behind a bus and can do nothing but listen to the sounds of her pleading for her life, until Shishigami puts an end to it with a A short time later, Ichiro finds the house and is devastated upon seeing the carnage. He thinks to himself that this is unforgivable. Why would anyone do such a thing? When we hear Shishigami talking to himself, saying that he must have somehow missed their grandpa. Without missing a beat, he shoots Ichiro in the head, knocking him to the ground and begins to walk out of the house. As he walks away, Ichiro makes his way out of the house. Sensing this, Shishigami turns around, wondering what the hell he is, before quickly heading out. Ichiro realizes that he must have been the other one that was there the night they were crashed into. A few days later, on his way home from work, Ichiro sees a group of thugs cut in front of a bunch of people waiting in line for a taxi. One of the salarymen waiting politely tells them that there's a line and asks if they could please wait their turn. The thugs, insulted by this, then drag the man into a nearby alley, with Ichiro following close behind. The man asks the men if they want money. When they say it's too late for that now, they're going to kill him. The man apologizes and begs for forgiveness, saying he has a wife and child. They, however, don't care and just want to fight. They're just about to throw a punch when Ichiro speaks up, telling the man to get to safety, that he will handle it from here. He takes a fighting stance. The thugs all start laughing at him, and he charges in with the windmill. He gets kneed in the stomach and counters by making the thug do some sick flips. Then, the rest of them start attacking him as well. And while Ichiro doesn't really have the best form, all he really needs is one good hit to send them flying back, knocking them out. It doesn't take long until all the thugs are dealt with. Back at the taxi line, the salaryman thanks Ichiro for saving his life, with Ichiro responding he's just glad he's okay. As he walks off, he again begins to listen in for any trouble in the surrounding area, when he hears the screams of a family in a house fire. He figures out where the house is and is worried he'll be too late again, when he remembers that Shishigami somehow flew away, so he should be able to do that too. He desperately tries to get it to work, but can't quite figure it out, until he starts singing the Astro Boy theme song to himself, opening his back, revealing the jets. He blasts off. At first he has a hard time controlling the jets, but eventually reaches the burning house. He goes inside, pulling out the father, and after asking if anyone else is inside, the grandmother. The father thanks him, to which he says there's no need. He then asks them to please not mention anything about him to the police, or anyone else, before he walks off. Once Ichiro makes it far enough away, he says to himself, while crying, thank goodness, that he's so happy he could save them all. Elsewhere, Shishigami convinces Ando to come to school, and to stop just staying in his room all day, saying that he will protect him. Once at school, the bullies do eventually find out that Ando has come back. They start trying to drag him up to the rooftop to beat him up again, when Shishigami intervenes, telling them to knock it off. One of them tells Shishigami that he's coming too, putting his hand on his head. Shishigami grabs his hand with that gorilla grip, forcing him down onto the ground, telling him to apologize to Ando, and to say that they will never come near him again. The bully reluctantly does so, much to the shock of all of his friends. Later that day after school, Shishigami takes Ando up to the school's rooftop, handing him a pair of binoculars and telling him where the bullies are. Ando tries to find them, when we hear
Bah, 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 bah.
Ando asks him what he's doing when he sees it, that Shishigami has killed the bullies from earlier. As they walk home, Shishigami elaborates on his full abilities, that he can tap into all internet messaging services, fully control all electronics, and could probably even send a nuke from USA to China with ease if he wanted to. That afternoon, Ando tells Shishigami that he can't be friends with him anymore. He can't be friends with someone who kills so casually, and tells him not to come near him ever again. Shishigami doesn't really understand why any of that would bother him, but agrees to his request, telling him to just not skip school anymore, before walking off. Elsewhere, on his walk home from work, Ichiro walks past a cat with a little kitten beside it on the street. This makes him think that he should take Hanako for a walk when he gets home, when he hears a car behind him hit something. Worried, he turns around and can see that one of them got hit. He immediately runs over to try and help, not knowing whether it would be faster to fly or run to the nearest veterinarian. He then senses that he may be able to do something. He places the cat back down and begins to heal the animal's injuries. It opens its eyes and appears to be completely fine, before they walk off. Immediately after this, he makes his way to a nearby hospital and begins to heal as many people afflicted with cancer and other life-threatening conditions as he can. A few days go by, and Ando continues to hear news about families dying from what appears to be gunshot wounds, but without any evidence of a gun being used. He calls the police, but can't bring himself to rat out Shishigami. He tries to do some research about how Shishigami became the way he is, when he reads a news story about miracles that have been happening all over Tokyo lately, about patients with serious illnesses having found themselves suddenly and inexplicably cured. He thinks back to when Shishigami first told him about his powers. Ando had given himself a paper cut, which was immediately healed by Shishigami. He wonders if it's him doing this, saving some people's lives while continuing to kill others, but concludes that that's not something he would do. He then thinks that there must be someone else out there who has the abilities Shishigami does, but is doing the exact opposite, and helping people instead of hurting. Not knowing how he could find out if this person even exists for sure, he remembers Shishigami telling him that he can hear everything everyone says around him, no matter how quiet. Ando then starts yelling for help around his room, saying that someone is going to kill him, and nothing happens. When the doorbell to the house rings, and we hear a confused Ichiro talking to Ando's mother, asking if they're okay. Ando races downstairs and outside, and is amazed that there really is another person like Shishigami. He asks Ichiro that he's shirtless because he flew here, right? Much to the confusion of Ichiro, who asks him how he knew that. Ando invites him into his room and asks him if he's a cyborg. Ichiro is shocked, but Ando tells him that his childhood friend is the same. He asks Ando if he knows what Shishigami is doing, and Ando admits that he does. Ichiro says that what he's done is unforgivable, and that he has to find a way to stop him. Ando then asks him about the miracles happening in hospitals around Tokyo, wondering if that's his doing. Ichiro admits that it is, and Ando thinks that it's amazing, calling him a real-life superhero and beginning to tear up. Ando asks him to please stop Shishigami, that he will help him in any way he can. Ichiro admits that he might have to end up killing his childhood friend, then asking Ando if he still wants to help. He replies, saying that he isn't the same hero Shishigami that he grew up with. Now he's just a monster. Ichiro admits that the main reason he's been helping people and saving lives is because he's been too scared to face the possibility that he may have become some monstrous, soulless machine now too. Ando says he's more human than anyone he's ever met, and would be willing to give his life to be able to do anything that can help him. The next day after school, a classmate of Shishigami, Shion Watanabe, runs up to him, saying that she saw him stand up for Ando the other day in class, which she thought was really cool, and she confesses that she has feelings for him.
ありがと
This fucking guy. Later that night, as he's going to bed, Shishigami's mother says that she needs to tell him something. She explains that she went to the hospital earlier that day, and after some hesitation, tells him that she has pancreatic cancer, and it seems to have spread to her lungs as well. She tells him that she's only been given about a month to live, and there's nothing that the doctors can do. She tells him that when she's gone, he can go and live with his father and their family, and to please not drop out of high school. He hugs her, crying, telling her that he won't let her die. Little does she know, he means that literally. Meanwhile, Ando goes with Ichiro to a vacant junkyard, trying to help him hone his combat abilities. They assemble a stack of compacted metal to use as target practice. Except Ichiro, like a real man, only knows how to use his fists. It takes a while, but with Ando remembering the things that Shishigami had told him about how his body works, they manage to trigger his arm into a full cannon, which, after shooting, renders the compacted metal into a deep crater. The next morning, Shishigami and his mother are watching the news about the recent murdering of families, where she asks how could anyone be so horrible, saying that someone like that should be sent straight to hell. Shishigami asks her, what if it was him who did it? And she says that she would follow him into the grave. Later at school, Shishigami receives a phone call, and apparently now just uses his hand, pretending he has a phone, from his mother, telling him that a miracle happened and she is now cancer-free. That night, Shishigami makes a promise, that from here on out, he is going to stop killing people, that he's done with it. When the morning comes, the doorbell to the house is ringing. His mother goes and opens it when police storm inside the house. Hey, thanks for watching. This is part 1, with part 2 coming out soon. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it when it comes out.